Hopefully you could refresh a little bit. We go to the second round. Hopefully it's still very informative as well. And for the next person, Evi, I can introduce, probably no introduction is really needed. So she's really, you just gave me the latest number on LinkedIn, 200,000 followers. So she's definitely one of the big global fintech and tech influencer, but also a seasoned Wall Street professional. She gained really tons of awards, recognitions, and she was so modest to not allow me name all of them. So again, I can just say, please Google Evi and you will be very, very much surprised. Evi, please come on stage.
Thank you, Raphael.
Stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raphael. I mean, really, if I think of my evolution, I started my career on Wall Street, and actually at Salomon Brothers, of all places. I was in a group, the group that you probably know, the guys that left Salomon Brothers and formed Long-Term Capital Management, so you can understand the kind of, business culture and aggressiveness that I grew up, so to speak, with. And here I am today in this auditorium, Google, a big tech company, and I'm preaching as a global fintech thought leader about openness. I mean, what an evolution. From a completely proprietary culture to preaching openness. And actually, last year, I had been invited to give a talk to a Singularity U summit in South Africa. And during that talk, the big theme was about openness, which in my mind is a Greek deity. And actually, if you look around this evening, there aren't many women, if you have noticed, but this deity, which of course is a woman, openness is right here. And if you're wearing smart glasses, like the glasses that Fabrice is wearing tonight, nobody knows that he's wearing them, but he can see this deity openness, and she is really operating behind the scenes and is going really to lead where the industry is going to go. So let me start by telling you things that you really know, and you don't need smart glasses like the ones that Fabrice is wearing with traditional glasses. You really know that financial products are being commoditized. You know that the business model of traditional banking, asset management, and wealth management is also threatened by fintech and tech. You don't need me to tell you that there's a big structural change going on because of the demographics, because of the baby boomers, because of the wealth transfer. You don't need me to tell you that customers are changing not only their expectations, but they're also changing their values as we speak. And because they're changing their values, the goals that they have, the outcomes that they seek in their financial life are very different than they were 30 years ago when I was on Wall Street, but even 5 years ago. So what can we learn from open banking, where openness has penetrated more than any other sector? And when I say open banking, I'm talking about consumer banking. So you've seen, we all know, multiple examples where open consumer banking at the level of deposits, of spending, of lending has penetrated. We have seen it in the form of contactless payments, buy now, pay later, embedded payments on e-commerce sites. We have started to see these use cases, they're real. OpenWealth is behind. And of course, it's much more complex, but the reality is that it is behind. So what can we learn from what is going on in the openness in consumer banking? The first sort of focus that we should have, and the first lesson is that it's all about customer centricity. And what do I mean here? Because this is a buzzword, it's been around for quite a long time, and different people understand different things. Basically, from open and embedded finance, what it is doing is it is going and meeting the customer where the customer is. So openness, this dyad, is all about making finance more distributed and going and meeting the customer at the point of sale. That's what embedded consumer banking has taught us. So what insight can we gain around OpenWealth as we see that open consumer banking is meeting the customer at the point of sale? Well, think of the other trend that is going on in digital banking. We are seeing what's called affinity banking, where we have customized consumer banking services for specific groups. There's for athletes, for restaurants that do delivery, for wellness and hair salons, for China exporters that are small in size. And we see these affinity banking, digital banking services. And what is happening there is, on top of the consumer banking services, they're offering them marketing, sales services, loyalty program services. And essentially, if you think of it, they're forming a financial operating system right where these affinity groups are. So how can we do that for wealth? How can we go meet the customer where revenue is created? That is the big challenge that OpenWealth has to solve. Another challenge and opportunity is the fact that there are a big number of customers that are not served by the wealth management sector. Who are they? I'll give you an example. Oliver Wyman, in their latest report, they talk about the opportunity and the challenge of serving Henrys, the high earners that are not yet rich and are earning something between 250, 500,000, or that's kind of their wealth. So if you think of it, this group is served, according to Oliver Wyman, about 15 to 20%. So there's an 80% opportunity there. How do you do that? So these are two big opportunities that are being served by open banking, but not by OpenWealth. So what lesson can we learn from that? Well, if we're honest and we look at the relationship between asset managers and wealth managers up to now, what it's been is a product distribution relationship. That's traditionally what it's been. It's supported by technology, but let's call it by its name. Asset managers are fighting for space on the shelf of wealth managers, and that's what it's been. And it is unprofitable to serve in a customized way these affinity groups or the Henry groups. So what needs to be done is really to change this relationship between wealth managers and asset managers. They need to see their relationship in practice as a relationship between partners. And in this day and age, partners need to data enable each other. So let's think of, from the point of view of wealth managers, if they are doing their digital transformation internally, data enabling internally their organizations, that's not enough. They need to data enable their partners, their asset managers. And on the other hand, the asset managers need to be able to communicate, as Fabrice was saying before, with APIs with the wealth managers. And the reason is that that will allow them to co-create. And what this is going to do is it's going to change the way wealth managers actually select asset managers. Up to now, mainly the criteria have been performance and some other criteria that have to do, again, with quantitative criteria of the specific product. So they've been always focused on specifics of the product. In the world of open wealth, the selection criteria are going to be completely different. They're going to be a long list, and here I have a very basic one, about how the asset manager can integrate digitally with the wealth manager. And it will start with their ability to streamline online content. It will go on to their ability to co-create customized products and co-create outcomes. And when I say outcomes, I differentiate them from outputs, which are products. Outcomes are financial goals for their customers. So this has already started happening. It's not just a vision and an idea to think about and it will come sometime down the road. It is already happening, and I'm here showing you just one example where by digitizing, modularizing, separately managed accounts, we have the possibility of direct indexing, and that really is a big step in open wealth. Now, this started, the interest in direct indexing really started because of the theme of ESG investing. About a year or two ago, as we all know, there was this big focus in ESG investing, and that has driven a part of this open wealth sort of trend. Big companies like Vanguard, like BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan have done major acquisitions. The companies here have been acquired, and they are all enablers of direct indexing. As we speak right now, Morningstar is launching a direct indexing platform, and this is done through a fintech called SmartX, which is really an enabler of direct indexing. What does SmartX do? They do rebalancing for managed accounts. But the rebalancing is not like it was for by the first robos. It is at a much deeper level. It's at the sleeve level. So they are capable of customizing tax loss harvesting, not once a year before year end, but continuously. So you see the evolution and how you can use technology to really get to a point where you could, if you wanted to, create a fund of one for all. Why? Because it is a profitable business. This will allow you to both grab a market share of that 230 billion opportunity of the Henrys that right now in a traditional technology setup, in a traditional architecture, you cannot do profitably. It will also allow you to go and meet these affinity groups right where the point of revenue is, right where other platforms are building what you can think of as the finance operating system of this affinity group. So, as I said, one use case that is already happening, especially in the US, is this API-fication of managed accounts. You can imagine what this means in terms of business opportunity and how it can scale. As I said, it all started with the ESG craze, and now we understand that it can unlock a lot of value. Again, in the US, I'm starting to see that there are consultants that are looking at what's called the wealth integration scoring, so they can evaluate vendors, brokers, anybody that has technology to link to other ecosystem players and score them, rate them in a lot of depth in terms of their ability to integrate. So this is going to be the major KPI and not just what we said before, the performance of the funds. In terms of wealth managers that or businesses that are already going along these lines, I think and this is a sample really, Bank of America, their life plan offering is really aiming to be a holistic integration between consumer banking and their investment business. Morgan Stanley's next best action, I think, is sort of further down their roadmap compared to anybody else in terms of their integration. Just to give you an example, many have built their risk management systems on BlackRock's Aladdin, but what Morgan Stanley has done, they've integrated so it is integrated in the technology that they give to their financial advisors. That's not the case, for example, for UBS. So you see how it matters the degree that you can integrate different capabilities that you have so you can serve and customize your offerings. The Marigold and Go, which I'm sure most of you don't recognize their name. It's a really weird name for a fintech. And it comes from a company that's a conglomerate and just launched this fintech. And what it is a private banking app that aims to manage the financial lives of at least the Henrys, the 230 billion opportunity. But what's interesting here is this conglomerate has companies in their portfolio, from a printing company in Australia, a security company in Canada, a company with bakeries and goods in the US, and now they're launching this fintech that is a private bank. And by the way, in my opinion, I think it is time that at least the OpenWealth Association, but not only, gets rid of the term of private banking. Why? It's a completely anachronistic term. It was invented in the 16th century when the royal families, the British and the Dutch and some noble families from those countries, were afraid that their wealth was going to be confiscated, that there was going to be a revolution, and that's how private banking came about. it is really anachronistic in this day and age to use this term, because we are at a point where we can not only serve the high net worth individuals with the so-called private banking services, we can serve much lower the Henrys and even lower. And in terms of alternatives, again, this is a huge asset class. It's always been the biggest asset class if you think of private markets versus public markets. It was traditionally only available to the ultra high net worth individuals. And right now, as we speak, there are several companies that are democratizing access, and you can, as an accredited investor, only get in with 10,000 or 20,000 minimums and create a very nice diversified portfolio. So both these terms are anachronistic and contradict our open wealth journey. And this journey is really about what I like to think of combinatorial innovation. And I know that sounds a bit like a mathematical thing, but it's all about combining different modules and innovating. And again, Fabrice gave me a lot of sort of points and numbers. I think you spoke about 1,500 modules in your technology stack, and imagine what can be done going forward. While you're going down this journey, while you're keeping, the Greek deity openness on your right side to keep an eye on how you're doing, you need to make sure that you do not forget that you cannot be a smart enterprise and have partners that are not smart. What good is that? It's not going to be an intelligent network. So as a smart enterprise, you really need to focus on data enabling your partners. And then you also will have the luxury to choose which partners are best, again, by ranking them and scoring them and continuously evaluating them in terms of their ability and your ability to integrate and talk to each other. I mean, this is a slide that you cannot read, but you probably know about this famous 2002 Bezos memo that he sent out with the 5 commandments. The most important one is that he said that everybody has to communicate internally, all the teams, all the business lines, everybody, through these interfaces, these APIs. And if not, what did he say? Anyone who doesn't obey this rule will get fired. Thank you very much. So here we are 20 years later, and this is very much relevant to what kind of culture and mindset you need to have to create a smart enterprise. And once you do that, again, be able to have your external APIs and a system that allows you to be a smart enterprise in an intelligent network. That is the only way that you can be able to serve right now these affinity groups, right where others are creating a financial operating system around their businesses, where they're earning their revenues, or the Henrys. And tomorrow it can be something else. The last thought that I want to add to this, because I spoke sort of 2 examples of specific ones that are underway in terms of open wealth, the managed accounts, the modularization there, and the direct indexing, the opportunities created by open banking, the form that it's taking. But there's another very important aspect to keep in mind, that as we speak, the concept of assets is broadening. And wealth and asset managers have the choice to decide whether they want to be serving these new assets. And some of these new assets are obviously the digital assets. Today, for example, if I own any digital assets, not all wealth managers will recognize them, and I can't use them as collateral, and my borrowing capacity is less than it should be. But there can be many more assets that are right now intangible. They're not tokenized. Nobody has the ability to value them, and therefore wealth managers cannot manage them and use them to help you attain the financial goals of your life. So imagine a wealth manager and an asset manager that broadens the concept of assets, even to the extreme of thinking that digital identity is an asset. The other day I was reading a really great article that was talking about a situation where somebody walks in here with a gun, he points it to my head and says, "Your money or your identity." What am I going to do? I'm going to give my money, right? So just as an example of the value of an identity and whether a wealth and asset manager can decide to go in the position of managing that asset. And of course, there's many more assets, the passion assets and so on. So all in all, I want to remind you that you are a player in hopefully an intelligent network. You can embark on becoming a smart enterprise, but you also need to enable your partners to be also smart, and that way you will be able to deliver value, deliver outcomes for the financial lives of your customers wherever they are, whether they're in a city, whether they're in the countryside, whether they are at sea or up in the skies, wherever they are, you go meet the customer and you deliver value. I'm Effie Pilarinu, and I hope you enjoyed my talk. I am available to collaborate with you on content and thought leadership. And if anybody here wants to embark on a journey, on a campaign to rebrand private banking in this open finance world, and exclusive to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Effie. You like Lego as much as I do, obviously. It was very insightful. You mentioned several times, so we don't need you to tell us. I think it was absolutely needed that you told us a lot and very eye-opening. And I'm sure there are even questions or remarks or somebody who wants to join this journey you want to embark already. So please, anyone.
Yes.
I have a question regarding, you were talking about UMA, SMA, so that's very, UMA and SMA, that's really North American concept. Unified managed accounts, separate managed accounts. But you're talking about the fact that they may convert, they may switch to APIs to communicate and do their rebalancing, etc. Is there any standard that is actually any local open wealth that is actually providing standardized APIs to communicate this kind of the information between the manager and the bank?
Well, there is not an open standard as you I know you define it, But there are associations both in Canada and in the US that are developing such standards. It's a work in progress. So it's still, I would say, it's still boxed in an ecosystem. It's not completely standardized out there. But it will definitely go in that direction. Actually, Fidelity and some other players are collaborating on this topic. Yeah.
If the extreme of openness is represented by blockchain, how do you see the role of banks evolve in the future then?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, there's four sort of clusters of players, and they're all affected and pushed by openness. The incumbents, the fintechs, the big techs also. Big techs are not open completely, right? And then we have the protocols that are also in that space. And yeah, I mean, I think, let me put it this way. We're building today on an old infrastructure, especially in terms of payment rails. And it is clear that that will be, that there's a lot of competition suddenly. Correspondent banking has a healthy competitor, and regulation, the regulators recognize that. What will happen? I mean, I don't have the crystal ball, but definitely we are going to have different ways of working around what we call the banking system. I mean, think of it. Apple has also announced a huge plan, a breakout plan to build in-house payments. I'm looking at Oscar to make sure that what I say is absolutely correct. You know, we know the blockchain. Today I was reading Strike with the Lightning Network, who got another 80 million funding, and they have linked not only to Shopify, but they're going to link to others. So the world is moving, and I think we should all watch at the payment layer what is happening, because obviously that is the core that will change. Will the banks lose a big part of that business, and what does that mean? I don't know, but it's definitely happening at the infrastructure level.
Another question, top left. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we do the shorter way, but come back to you, sorry.
Hi, Effie, thank you for this presentation. And for me, you are the person to go when it comes to thought leadership in investment banking and asset management. So thank you for this presentation. My question is, I wanted to challenge you a little bit. So with all this openness of the banks, where they should go for, how they can connect or open to metaverse. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Oh. Well, let's first of all, the metaverse vision is at its core is in alignment with the OpenWealth vision, because here we are talking about not only serving more people at scale and customized, but we are also, whether we do it consciously or not, we're going to allow more players to build the businesses and value, right? And therefore, there's going to be less concentration of profits and wealth to, 5 big players, the big asset managers or the big wealth managers. So in that sense, I see the metaverse, its ethos is supposed to be to also, like in Web3, to share the rents. So in that sense, again, I see more openness. The metaverse in its ethos has more openness. How is it now? It's very closed, right? Because that's how everything starts. It's controlled from, again, 5 big tech companies. But that is how, you know, innovation starts. I think in general in the world, there is a bottom-up push of collaboration, which is connected with openness. They're not the same thing. But think of it, blockchain in itself is a collaborative technology in its spirit, right? Whether we people, you know, are scammers and do all sorts of things with the blockchain is another issue, but the technology in itself is a collaborative technology, and it can allow us to, for example, build value collaboratively and reduce the rents in correspondent banking or whatever. AI is not by its nature collaborative, but it gives us the sort of potential to create a lot of value by using that technology in collaboration. So the metaverse is the same thing. For now, I don't see the connection between wealth and the metaverse. My only connection right now is when I think of the affinity groups that I spoke about before, where we have open banking and we're serving different affinity groups. Let's serve all those that are the gamers that are really seeding the metaverse. And then we'll have a good opportunity to understand that group and capture the wealth that will be created there, and so on. That's my current thinking. I'll be around if you want to, you know, come and talk to me, and yeah. I even have physical cards. I've had them 3 years now. Yes.
All right. So first thing first, I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciated your flow more than the presentation, and I really enjoyed listening to you talk.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of points to address. The first one is it seems like, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay. The first one being, you seems to be addressing your presentation more of the custodians rather than all the others. Seems like you're talking to how to deliver certain value to them. And for that, I just want to maybe leave a point of discussion, maybe for now, maybe for later, if you want to do maybe more in private. And the thing is, on the one hand, the bank have a marginal, like they don't really have a way, at least on the management level, to understand how to invest in those kind of clients, right? So there's like the highly personalized space, which I work in, which is like ultra networks and this kind of stuff. But when it comes to lower end clients, they basically just invest by hiring people that actually brings more money, and they have like a small spread on those clients, and therefore they only keep the client that they basically can milk the most out of. So that's the first point. And I think what you have been saying is great.
In the fear that also looking a little bit on time, maybe please point out the question, and I think Effie is still around afterwards.
Yes,
I will. So I just wanted to say that because maybe she wanted to answer like what you think about and whatnot. Since we are time sensitive, I just wanted to actually have a question since everybody spoke, especially to you guys, and I wanted to take the chance to ask the regulatory landscape for which you are not talking to the guys like Lombardo, so not as a bank, but actually as a software provider of core banking. but you rather have to go through every bank and build every different interface and have all those sort of different things. And I think this is a key point. And maybe it's like you don't have access because the custodian needs to be part of, some kind of the bureaucracy behind the authorization. But I think technology-wise, Lombard Odier serves 20 banks, 200 banks, depending on the size of the core banking software. And I think it would be a much bigger optimization of your actually building all these kind of different connections.
Sorry,
Question now, and to whom do you want to address?
To whoever wants to question, but basically to you guys. So the question is, and here there are other people that can answer the question, is there a legal limit for which you cannot actually integrate directly the core banking system through the API, therefore building one connection that would actually serve 20 on your end, so I can get 200 at the price of,
I'm not sure what you're asking, but let's have that discussion afterwards, because I think there's a panel discussion that is awaiting.
It's a good point. We have afterwards, or not afterwards, actually right now we need to improvise, but first please let me thank you again.
Thank you
very much, Efi, and also
thank you.
and you this
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.